Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive designed just for you. Today, we're going way back to the Iron Age, using your notes on the Celts as our guide. It's like we're piecing together clues from an ancient civilization, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think you'll find the Celts were a complex, people often misunderstood. We tend to lump ancient cultures into simple boxes, but the deeper you go, the more those assumptions unravel.
Okay, so your notes jump right in with a revolution, the Iron Age. Around 700 BC, ironworking takes off. What impact did this new supermaterial have on the ancient world?
It's almost impossible to overstate how massive a shift this was. Think about it. Bronze, the dominant metal before, was relatively scarce, but iron, more readily available, easier to work with. Suddenly, tools weren't just for the elite, they were for everyone. Farming became more efficient, warfare changed overnight. It's like the world went from dial-up to broadband. Wow, that puts it into perspective. And right as this iron boom is happening, we see the rise of the Celts. Your notes place them in Central Europe around 650 BC, reaching Ireland by 500 BC. But they weren't a single empire like Rome, were they?
That's a common misconception. The Celts were more of a cultural collective. Imagine a network of tribes, each with their own king or queen, their own territory.
Hmm?
But what bound them together were these shared threads of language art styles that are instantly recognizable today and similar traditions. It's like recognizing someone's accent or taste in music, even if their backgrounds are different.
Fascinating. And speaking of leaving their mark, your notes mention something called ogam. These stone carvings, almost like ancient graffiti, seem to record names and other details. What can you tell us about this unique writing system?
Ogam is more than just a writing system. It's a testament to the human need to remember, to leave a legacy. Just like we leave flowers at a grave or share stories of loved ones, the Celts used Ogam to commemorate their dead, to etch their names into stone for eternity. Different methods, same human impulse.
It makes you wonder what stories those stones could tell, doesn't it? Speaking of stories, I was really struck by the description in your notes about how the Celts dressed.
It's easy to picture our ancestors in like bland, practical clothing, but the Celts were anything but bland.
You're telling me. My notes mentioned trousers and cloaks, and get this, they used berries for dyes. They were rocking colorful threads long before it was trendy. What does that say about them as a culture?
It speaks to like a deep-seated human need for self-expression. Think about it from the practical to the flamboyant. We use clothing to signal who we are, who we want to be. The Celts were no different. Those vibrant colors, they weren't just about aesthetics. They were about status, tribal affiliation, even individual flair.
This vibrant clothing style probably extended to their warriors, who were known for more than just their ferocity, right? Your notes mention storytelling and a hero's portion ritual. What was that all about?
It's easy to focus on the battles, but to truly grasp a culture, you have to look at their values. This ritual where the bravest warrior got the best cut of meat speaks volumes. It tells us about their social hierarchy, the respect for courage, how those things intertwined. Even today, we're hardwired to crave stories of heroes of courage rewarded.
Absolutely. Now, your notes also talk about the Eos Dana, the skilled class judges, priests, poets, craftsmen. It sounds like they were walking, talking encyclopedias, no written text, so they had to memorize everything.
Imagine the dedication that took. Brehons or judges memorizing entire legal codes, druids, the keepers of wisdom passing down knowledge through generations, Hilly the poets recounting history in verse again. Oral tradition was everything. A world we can barely fathom in our age of instant information, yet echoes of it remain in storytelling traditions still alive around the world.
And here's a twist I wasn't expecting. Your notes point out that Celtic women held a surprising amount of power. They could own property, get divorced, even have multiple spouses. That's pretty unheard of for the ancient world.
It's crucial to note this because it shatters our preconceptions about women's roles in the past. While we don't want to romanticize it, the Celts offer a fascinating case study. Compared to many other societies of that era, Celtic women enjoyed a greater degree of agency and influence. They could be landowners, inherit property, even lead their tribes in some cases.
So we've got fashion warriors and a glimpse into their social structure, but where did these folks actually live? Your notes mention Ringfort's Crannogs. It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It does. And just like in those novels, their homes tell a story. Ring forts with their stout earthen walls suggest a need for defense in, like, a turbulent world. But then you've got Crannogs, those artificial islands hidden away in lakes. Talk about resourcefulness. Absolutely. It's like they were living out their own version of Survivor thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And that connection to their environment, their ability to work with nature, is something that resonates even today.
Totally.
Your notes mention their diet.
Hmm.
Local grains, dairy, fruits, mead, they were the original locavores.
It's funny how things come full circle, isn't it? We think of farm to table as this new concept, but it's really a return to those ancient rhythms. But they weren't all about survival and practicality, were they? They definitely knew how to have a good time.
Absolutely. Your notes mention board games like Brandov and Fischl, which sounds suspiciously like ancestors to checkers and chess. And then there's Bear, their version of golf. Makes you wonder if they ever argued about who took an extra stroke just like we do today.
Huh. I can just picture it. It's amazing how these simple pleasures, these games and pastimes, transcend time and culture.
It speaks to like a fundamental part of what makes us human, the need for connection, competition, a bit of fun in our lives. But of course, no exploration of a culture would be complete without talking about their beliefs.
You're right. My notes mention the Celts were polytheistic, worshipping a pantheon of gods, with Andagda as a prominent figure. What else can you tell us about their relationship with the divine?
Religion and mythology have always been humanity's way of making sense of the world, don't you think? The Celts wove elaborate tales of gods and goddesses, each representing different forces of nature, human emotions, even skills like craftsmanship or warfare. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were a way to understand the world around them, to explain the unexplainable, to find meaning in the cycles of life and death.
It's like those stories were their way of connecting the dots, of finding order in chaos. Speaking of cycles, your notes highlight these major Celtic festivals. Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, Samhain, each one tied to the seasons, to agriculture. It's like their calendar was deeply intertwined with the natural world.
And what's fascinating is how those ancient rhythms still echo in our modern lives, even if we don't always realize it. The timing of some of our most beloved holidays, think May Day celebrations or Halloween, share a remarkable similarity with those old Celtic festivals. It's as if those ancient traditions, that connection to the turning of the year, never truly disappeared.
It's incredible to think about how these seemingly distant cultures still ripple through time, influencing us in subtle ways. As we resurface from this deep dive into the world of the Celts, I have to say I'm struck by their ingenuity, their artistry, and their surprisingly modern outlook in some ways.
What I find most compelling is how they challenge our assumptions about the past. The Celts were far more than just fierce warriors or skilled artisans. They were people who valued community, who celebrated life cycles, who sought to make sense of the world through stories and rituals. And those impulses, that deep well of human experience, still resonate with us today.
You've given me a lot to think about, so for you listening, here's a final thought to ponder. We've seen how the Celts use stories to celebrate their heroes and make sense of the world. What stories do we tell today about our own past, and how do those narratives shape our present and future?